I surprised my long-distance boyfriend, but his roommate's reaction told me everything. My boyfriend Nathan and I had been doing long-distance for 8 months after he got a job across the country. We made it work with daily FaceTime calls and good morning texts and sending each other silly memes throughout the day. He lived with a female roommate named Chloe, who he said was basically like his sister and totally not his type anyway, which I never even asked about, but whatever. His 28th birthday was coming up, and he kept saying how much it sucked that we couldn't be together for it. He sounded so sad on our calls that I decided to surprise him and booked a flight without telling anyone. I even called his boss pretending to be his sister to make sure he didn't have meetings that Friday. The flight was brutal, but I was so excited thinking about his face when he saw me at his door. I stopped at a bakery near his apartment and got his favorite chocolate croissants and this stupid birthday hat with sparkles because he always wore ridiculous things to make me laugh. I had his address from sending care packages but had never actually been there before. Walking up to his building with my suitcase and bakery box, I felt like I was in one of those romantic movies we used to watch together. I knocked on the door and heard footsteps coming closer, and my heart was beating so fast from excitement. The door opened and there was Chloe, this pretty brunette in yoga pants and Nathan's college hoodie that I'd bought him. Her face went from confused to shocked to something I couldn't read at first. Then her eyes filled with tears and she started shaking, and I thought maybe something had happened to Nathan. I asked if he was okay, and she just stood there crying harder and harder until she was basically sobbing. She kept saying, "No, no, no, no," over and over, and I was getting scared that Nathan was hurt or dead or something terrible. Finally, she grabbed my arm and pulled me inside and said, "You need to leave right now before he gets back," which made no sense at all. I told her I was his girlfriend and showed her photos of us on my phone from just last month when he'd visited me. She looked at the photos and started crying even harder and said, "He told me you were his ex who wouldn't leave him alone," and my whole world shifted. I asked what she meant, and she said Nathan told her I was this psycho stalker ex-girlfriend who kept harassing him and making fake social media accounts to contact him. She said he showed her threatening texts from someone named Olivia, which is my name, saying I would ruin his life if I couldn't have him. She said he'd been getting restraining order paperwork ready and warned her that I might show up one day claiming to be his girlfriend. I felt like I couldn't breathe and asked how long they'd been together, and she said 10 months, which was 2 months longer than Nathan and I had been dating. She showed me photos on her phone of them at restaurants and movies and her meeting his parents at Thanksgiving, the same Thanksgiving he told me he had to work through. There were pictures of them in bed together from last week when he was supposedly at a work conference in Phoenix. She had a key to his apartment on her keychain right next to a little heart charm he'd given her for their 6-month anniversary, which was the same charm he'd sent me for our 3-month anniversary. We were both crying now and comparing texts from him, and they were almost identical, including the same good morning beautiful message he'd sent us both that very morning. Chloe and I were still comparing messages when we heard Nathan's key in the lock, and we both rose. He walked in carrying takeout bags saying, "Hey babe, I got Thai food from that place you wanted to try." And then he saw me standing there with my suitcase and his face went completely pale. He dropped the bags and pad Thai splattered everywhere, and he just kept looking between us like his brain was trying to compute what was happening. Chloe spoke first and said, "She's not your stalker ex, is she, Nathan?" And her voice was scary calm. He started stammering about how this wasn't what it looked like, and I could explain, and this was a misunderstanding. I held up my phone showing our FaceTime history and said, "8 months, Nathan, we've been together 8 months." And Chloe held up her phone and said, "10 months, you lying piece of garbage." He tried to step toward me saying I was the one he really loved, and Chloe was just convenient because she lived here. Then he turned to Chloe and said I was crazy and had tricked him into a relationship. We looked at each other and Chloe said, "Pack your stuff and get out." And he said, "But I'm on the lease." And she said, "No, you're not. I've been paying full rent while you've been using both of us." Chloe let me stay that night and we drank wine and cried and compared everything. Nathan had been collecting money from both of us, claiming he was broke from student loans. We found 3 other girls on his Instagram who had the same photos with him. Chloe and I are still friends.